Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another bountiful harvest of authors at Google Talks. My name is Cliff Redeker, and we're very pleased to host today the acclaimed gardener, chef, and artist, Dr. Amy Goldman. She's been described as, quote, perhaps the world's most premier vegetable gardener by Gregory Long, the current president of the New York Botanical Gardens. Amy's passion is agricultural diversity. Every year she preserves heirloom varietals of fruits and vegetables in her garden in upstate New York. She's also the current chairwoman of the board of the Seed Savers Exchange, which is a cooperative across the United States that purports to save heirloom varieties and distribute the seeds among the members. She's also a trustee on the Lillian Goldman Charitable Trust, which also helps her direct public attention to her mission, which is the conservation of heirloom varietals. Today she'll be speaking to us today about her latest book, which is called The Heirloom Tomato. It chronicles a year's journey in her garden. Over lunch today we were talking, and she mentioned that around 1,000 varieties of tomatoes were planted to make their way into the book here. So we have a collection of images, we have a collection of culinary ideas, and just really a book that celebrates the diversity of the tomato, which is our favorite fruit, in case you missed the advertisement. And of course, we here at Google have a long-standing and passionate relationship with the tomato. I'm sure for those of you that have been here several years, you remember Charlie's special red sauce and everything. And we even had some shout-outs to heirloom tomatoes on our menu today, courtesy of our chef, Brian Mattingly. So I hope that you'll enjoy the food that we had today, and that you'll continue to keep the sustainable movement in your minds. And for those of you that are on YouTube, if you lean in really, really close to your screen, you might be able to smell the tomatoes that we had for lunch. So after our talk, we'll have a time for a brief question and answer, as well as a book signing. So if you have any questions, I'll be here with the microphone for the benefit of our YouTube and our virtual audiences. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Amy Goldman.
Cliff, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here today to share with you my passion for heirloom tomatoes. Tomatoes and I go way back. You might even say they're in my blood. When I was a teenager, my parents bought a home on the North Shore of Long Island. Often a forgotten corner of the property was a drafty old greenhouse minus half of its glass. A mysterious relic that no one but me cared much about until I started growing tomato plants there. The structure stood on a rise, steps away from an abandoned garden. Later, I would plant an orchard on one side and grapes on the other, reclaiming the land and building. As a girl, though, I was captivated by the greenhouse just the way it was. The spooky coal room and furnace, the nifty trap door, and the floor-to-ceiling stacks of vintage unglazed terracotta pots. These empty vessels, embodiments of gardens past, seemed as if they were just waiting for me to fill them with new life. That first spring, after buying some books on vegetable gardening and seeking words of advice from a neighbor, I filled wooden flats with a mix of vermiculite and potting soil and planted my first tomato seeds. After the seedlings had acquired their first set of true leaves, I transferred them to those terracotta pots. My peroxided hair stuffed under a straw hat, I transplanted the seedlings into the garden. Later, on summer weekends, my father, Saul, would park himself in an Adirondack chair between the greenhouse and the garden to read the newspapers. He managed to keep a watchful eye on the harvest, as if he were still manning the cash register at Goldman's Italian-American grocery in Brooklyn, his family's store where he had worked since he was 5. When I walked by with a basket of tomatoes, he took a childlike glee in the vegetables I produced. I can still see him holding one, sniffing it, squeezing it. Nothing made him happier than the fruits of the earth, and nothing makes me happier. My mother Lillian was also appreciative. She did wonders with my tomatoes in the kitchen. Her specialties were Hungarian goulash and stuffed peppers with tomato sauce, and I swear they tasted better with my homegrown tomatoes. Both my parents were, in their way, tomato experts. Long before I was born, they began importing pelati, whole peeled canned tomatoes from Italy for their grocery store. 60 years later, I named a tomato for the store in honor of my parents. And Goldmans makes a sauce as thick and rich as any tomato I've ever grown. And yes, those are my grubby hands. But that's not my only family connection to tomatoes. Cousin Myrtle Tilly Lewis, who was related to both of my parents, was a giantess in the world food industry, the woman destined to become known as Queen of the Pear-Shaped Tomato. Tilly amazes me. Jewish girl makes good by introducing the San Marzano tomato as a successful commercial crop in California. Despite skepticism from agricultural experts, she succeeded in canning pelati that rivaled Italy's best. Tilly earned her stripes in the food business by working with her first husband, Louis Weisberg, a wholesale grocer in Brooklyn. Tilly was no farmer, but she knew a good thing when she ate it. Pomodori pelati, imported from the fertile farmland near Naples. She became a purchasing agent for the business and made frequent trips to Italy. On one of those trips, she met Florindo Del Gaizo, head of the Del Gaizo Distributing Company, the sales subsidiary of the biggest canner in Italy. It was a family firm, and quite a family at that. Florindo's father, Senator Luigi Del Gaizo, was president of the company, director of the Italian branch of the Bank of America, and head of Il Duce's corporate state. Here's the official version of what happened next. Tilly and Florindo hatched a plan to raise and pack the San Marzano in the San Joaquin Valley of California. This filled a niche created when the U.S. slapped prohibitive duties on imported Italian canned tomatoes in 1934. The new company was called Flotil Products, the Flo for Florindo and the Till for Tilly. They built a cannery and opened for business in 1935. There was more to the story, of course. Finally, my mother told me what the Brooklyn Eagle, Reader's Digest, and the Stockton Record never did. Tilly and Florindo had fallen madly in love. Mom led me to believe that Flo and Till had divorced their respective spouses and married each other, but that seems to be a whitewash. I was so naive. The pair were lovers for more than 10 years, until Flo's death in 1937. The San Marzano is their love apple. And San Marzano is my love apple, too. I seem to have an inexplicable urge to broadcast its seeds near and far. The same holds true for many other tomatoes from my garden. I'd known that writing and illustrating a tomato book would be a huge undertaking, if only because there are more than 5,000 cultivated tomato varieties to choose from. Over the course of 5 summers, I trialed more than 1,000 tomato varieties, starting with my favorites and letting the tribe increase until the garden was full. The leading candidates were grown at least twice. Those that didn't strike my fancy got chucked. In the process, a dozen notebooks filled with field observations and taste test results. From these, I generated voluminous card files. Doing the research and detective work was half the fun of writing this book. Facts lurked in old seed catalogs, scholarly works in 3 languages, and in the fine print in many obscure places. Often I found the answer simply by picking up the phone and asking the right person the right question. Tomatoes have, in fact, allowed me to take my place in a community of gardeners, chefs, seed savers, breeders, scholars, and others who care about tomatoes with a zeal that reminds me of my father's. These friends live all over the world: Italy, France, England, Australia, and down home America. Their camaraderie and generous sharing of seeds have enriched my life, my garden, and this book. My fellow tomatophiles, from Dorothy Beiswanger of Minnesota, seed saver extraordinaire, to Carrie Fowler, guardian of the world's plant genetic resources, have inspired me to put into words what could be learned from the past in hopes of creating a more bountiful future. My goal in this book is to give you everything you need to know to grow your own tomatoes, recipes to make the most of your harvest, and instructions on how to become a seed saver. Aren't the photographs wonderful? Collaborating with the incomparable Victor Schrager is one of the best things that ever happened to me. Together, I think we've done tomatoes justice. His photographs, accompanied by my pen portraits, give you a representative sample of the most beautiful, celebrated, and unusual tomatoes in my garden and in the world. The beauty of these tomatoes is more than skin deep. My 35 years of experience as a gardener, coupled with considerable book learning, have taught me that heirloom tomatoes, ripened on the vine in full sun, are the most delicious tomatoes of all. People long for more natural beauty, more flavor, and better nutrition on their dinner plates. Believe it or not, this tomato is actually called dinner plate. And believe it or not, there's also a tomato called Believe It or Not, and it's in the book. Tomatoes have never been more popular, but Tomatoland in America is dominated by commercial F1 hybrids with only their unyielding flesh to recommend them to the consumer. These hybrid tomatoes, bred to be grown in high plant densities and harvested mechanically, are a tool of industry and the market economy. Hybrids reduce biodiversity and prevent farmers and gardeners from saving harvested seed to regrow. Heirloom tomatoes are the natural alternative, capable of breeding true from seed and designed to be homegrown. Many are living legacies, old-time handed-down tomatoes, while others are of more recent vintage. All of them are keepers. There's so much more to the world of tomatoes than most of us realize. The heirloom tomato is not just the Brandywine. It's Aunt Gertie's Gold, Banana Legs, Bison, Dad's Sunset, Golden Jubilee, Jersey Devil, Liberty Bell, Mr. Brown, Purple Smudge, Roman Candle, Rutgers, Victory, Zapotec, and the list goes on. Don't the names grab you? These are tomatoes with character, created by characters. My book tells the story of 200 heirlooms and pays homage to the growers who bred or preserved these wondrous fruits. Fruits like Aunt Ruby's German Green, one of Bill Minky's finest acts in a long life of fine acts. Amana Orange, Gary Staley's Happy Accident. Marglobe, one of the greatest triumphs ever recorded to the credit of the plant breeder, Frederick Pritchard. German Pink, Diana Whaley's family heirloom from Bavaria. the tomato with which Seed Savers was founded, and the tomato that graces my book cover. And tomatoes come in an almost unbelievable array of colors, shapes, and sizes. Red may be the norm, but vive la différence. There's also violet brown with raspberry, grayish rose, reddish brown with green stripes, orange with yellow markings, yolk yellow with olive striping, and tangerine with dark violet shoulders. I classified my tomatoes into 8 horticultural groups based on size and shape of the fruit. I've got currants, cherries, ribbed ones, globes, beefsteaks, pears, plums, ox hearts, bell peppers. Those that defy description, I just call eccentric. Now I'd like to introduce you to some of my nearest and dearest tomatoes. I especially love the tiny toms, the wee tads, also known as the cherries and currants. Many of them have excellent flavor with higher sugar and acid than other larger tomatoes. I could eat this dish every day. The cherry tomato salad in a sherry shallot vinaigrette is divine. The salt and the acid from the vinegar pull out the natural juices and flavor of the tomatoes. It makes even a lousy tomato taste good. Alberto Shatters is the smallest tomato I've ever seen, and believe me, I've seen a lot of tomatoes. I named this variety for Alberto Vasquez of Virginia, the man who introduced it to Seed Savers Exchange members in 1981 as red currant drops fruit. If you don't already know about the Seed Savers Exchange, it's the nation's premier nonprofit seed saving group with a membership of 7,000 and going strong. Our mission is to preserve the world's diverse but endangered garden heritage for future generations by building a network of people committed to collecting, conserving, and sharing heirloom seeds and plants. Seed Savers is also devoted to educating people about the value of genetic and cultural diversity. I serve as chair of the board and invite you all to join forces and become members. You can check it out on the web, seedsavers.org. Let's put Alberto Shatters into perspective. The fruits are about the size of garden peas, a little over 1 gram in weight, and they're amazingly tomatoey and crunchy. The variety is primitive, but I wouldn't change a thing about it. The plant drops its fruit when ripe, a trait called shattering. By the way, it's the selection, harvesting, and sowing of non-shattering seeds by generations of farmers and gardeners that led to the domestication of all our major food crops. I recommend growing Alberto upside down in a topsy-turvy planter or else on a mound. Give it a shake and let the fruits drop into a basket or roll downhill. Then just scoop them up. This baby plum tomato is beyond compare. I'm overwhelmed every time I see Blancpaenchen's cascading flower trusses. They promise an impressive number of choice golden nuggets. I like to serve the tomatoes in spicy salsa. The key to a well-balanced salsa, apart from picking the right tomatoes, is pickling the onions in lime juice. This recipe, one of over 50 found in my book, can be used to make a dip for chips, and it's also great when spooned over grilled fish or fowl. This is one of the most heirloom of heirloom tomatoes. You're probably aware that tomato originated in the coastal highlands of South America. That's where primitive indigenous forms are found. But it was domesticated in Mexico. After the conquest of Mexico in 1521, tomatoes made their way to Europe. The conspicuously ribbed tomato, that's castelluto in Italian, was one of the first to be introduced, initially in Spain and then in Italy and France. The Italians have had an intimate relationship with tomatoes, ribbed tomatoes, for over 500 years. They call them nostrale, or ours. The pomodori castelluti are the tomatoes of choice for purees and concentrates, including black preserve, cakes of dense blackish paste, which were the first semi-industrial tomato product on the Italian market. I adopted Castelluto Genovese in 1989 and have made it mine too. I put the precious scallop slices on everything from sandwiches to pizza, knowing that I'm eating a bit of history. Some people in this part of the world are turned off by the knobbly looks of ribbed tomatoes. Don't be. They clean up pretty well. Now this one, I grant you, is ugly. Kind of looks like a tomato gone haywire or hemorrhoidal. Rhizotomate's bizarre appearance is due to a mutation at the fasciated locus associated with more and unfused carpels, but you knew that. In Central America, it's known as a traveler tomato. The lobes can be eaten one piece at a time, and the rest can be saved for later by travelers in transit. The audience on the Martha Stewart TV show really flipped when I took in a stalk of rhizotomate, also known as the pocketbook tomato, as my purse on handbag day. The tomato may not be as classic as an Hermes, but it's nonetheless priceless. Now, how better to poke fun at a mediocre red round tomato than to picture it with its arch enemy, the tomato hornworm. Sadly for this hornworm, those white egg cases laid by parasitic wasps spell its demise. The larvae tunnel in and dispatch the worm. More seriously, though, 100 years ago, Bonnie Best was considered the finest of all early red tomatoes. Very desirable for greenhouse culture and canning. Now it's mainly of historical significance. And in light of that significance, Dr. Michael Nee, curator of the Institute of Systematic Botany at the New York Botanical Garden, collected this herbarium specimen of Bonnie Best along with many others from my garden. It's now proudly housed at NYBG's Steer Herbarium, the largest herbarium in the Western Hemisphere. This is a contemporary of Bonnie Best's. Ford Hook First is a treasure, a perfectly lovely, firm pink slicer that's consistently among the first earlies, as precocious today as it was when Burpee introduced it in 1894. Ford Hook First is the tomato to eat with iceberg lettuce, one of the sweetest and firmest of head lettuces, yet much maligned for lack of flavor. The two vegetables were illustrated together in color in the 1894 Burpee's Farm Annual. Ford Hook and iceberg, cut in wedges and drenched in blue cheese and buttermilk dressing, is a mainstay of my summer diet. Whatever it may lack in snob appeal, it makes up for in sheer deliciousness. Pull down your blinds and try it. Not that I'd want to limit myself to Ford Hook First. People often ask me, what's your favorite tomato? And I kind of balk at that question because, well, I've got 200 favorites and they're all in my book. If you'd really like to know, then here are a few of my favorite favorites, and I highly recommend them. Aunt Ruby's German Green, the most popular green when ripe tomato. Fruity, grapey, and spicy are adjectives that begin to describe the flavor. White Beauty, the whitest of white tomatoes, with super excellent flavor. It has compared favorably with the best reds for over 80 years. Aunt Gertie's Gold qualifies as one of the greats, has a sumptuous, rich flavor, and reminds me of persimmon without the pucker. Burpee's Globe, introduced in 1935, so good, so honey sweet, you'll plots. This is the antithesis of today's industrial red rock tomato. Peach is a rare treat so fragile that it's strictly garden to table. It should inspire everyone to become a home gardener. These velveteen tomatoes, covered with a delicate bloom like a peach, are plush on the outside, sweet and juicy on the inside. Raw or cooked, they're tops in my taste test, with a cool and refreshing tomato-light flavor. You can serve peach tomatoes chilled, whole, or as a snack, and you can also serve them for dessert. When newly introduced in 16th century Europe, the tomato was mistaken for the wolf peach, or Lycopersicon, that Galen had identified nearly 1,000 years earlier. The name has stuck in one form or another. Now it's Solanum lycopersicum, even after botanists realized the tomato was strictly New World in origin. And I can't help equating the peach and the tomato. This galette is filled with succulent surprises, and it's really great served with vanilla ice cream. I'm so happy to see bicolor beefsteaks now appearing in farmers markets. These tomatoes have been a well-kept home gardener's secret. The bicolors are great for juicing and fresh eating. I love them on soft white bread with a little mayo and salt and pepper. Big Rainbow was my first bicolor. It's as breathtaking and dear to me today, even after sampling dozens of others, as it was nearly 20 years ago. When sliced and diced, the yellow flesh overspread with red reminds me of cut yellow peaches stained red from the pit. We have Dorothy Beiswinger of Crookston, Minnesota, to thank for this tomato. She got her seed from Lloyd Duggins about 30 years ago and has kept it going ever since. Dorothy recalls, "When I grew this one, it surprised me so much that I named it Big Rainbow because of its beauty and size and hope. At that time, I was not familiar with tomato plants that were not conventional, except for a small white one that I received from a friend. Big Rainbow was such a delight that I hoped for more such tomatoes. And so in the years to come, I did get a lot of great tomatoes." Indeed, she did. Dorothy joined Seed Savers in 1976 when there were only 141 members. For more than 30 years, she has blessed thousands with her seeds sent through the mail. I can envision her sitting at her farmhouse kitchen table, sorting stacks of letters and with seed requests and seed offerings, including a small hill of beans sent by a woman because having so many beans was driving her crazy. "I wondered what she was trying to do to me," Dorothy told me. I treasure Dorothy, who is saner than most of us, and her seed packets, made from envelope corners and then scotch taped. Like Dorothy, other home gardeners have enriched our lives. The orange strawberry was apparently a chance seedling from a bicolor beefsteak found in the garden of Marjorie Morris. Oxheart tomatoes make my heart sing, most especially this one, miraculously, astonishingly graceful. It's very firm like a ripe strawberry, and the flavor is exquisite. Best uses, anything is possible. Early members of the Seed Savers Exchange worked themselves into a frenzy trying to find a tomato so purple it looked black, about the color of Black Beauty eggplant. The so-called black or purple tomatoes, most of them imported from the former Soviet Union, created a sensation in America when they began appearing in the 1980s and 90s. I was sold even before I bit into one. The violet brown, burnt sienna, and Titian red are amazing technicolors. When the flavors are good, they're very, very good. Musky, exotic, and intense. Speaking of intense, the baked black cod with tomato butter is a gorgeous meal, especially when the black cod is paired with black tomatoes, such as black Krim or Russian black. Just be sure to use slightly underripe black tomatoes, peeled, seeded, and diced, and since they're quite soft when ripe. I adore the Red Brandywine. It's perfection. High acid, high sugar, savory, mouth-filling, and juicy. Endowed with intense flavor, extremely desirable. Eating a sweet and sprightly red brandywine can be a potent mood elevator, but for me, unearthing new facts about this tomato is even more gratifying. I've discovered that the pink-fruited, potato-leafed brandywine that we all know and love, the Sudeth's brandywine, is not, as is commonly believed, the original brandywine introduced in 1889 by Johnson and Stokes of Philadelphia. There's been a great deal of misinformation circulating, not only about brandywine's horticultural characteristics, but about its origin as well. If there had been a videotape or even microfilm, I would have gone to it. Instead, I found something better. Librarian Sherry Vance, standing by at Cornell's Ethel Zoe Bailey Horticultural Catalog Collection in Ithaca, New York. I told her that I wanted to get my hands on that 1889 Johnson and Stokes catalog and any other Johnson and Stokes catalog she might have. "Can you help?" I asked. Sherry replied, "I came across this information years ago and have just been waiting for someone to ask me about it." I had hit the jackpot. Sherry miraculously was in possession of nearly every catalog published by Johnson and Stokes between 1883 and 1915. And the catalogs leave no doubt about the original appearance of brandywine. The red brandywine with irregular leaves is the original. I also adore the pink brandywine, Sudeth's. It's excellent, like a fine wine, and I dare any modern hybrid to measure up. Sudeth's brandywine is now so ubiquitous that I can't imagine a tomato plot without it. It was introduced about 30 years ago by legendary nonagenarian tomato seedsman Benjamin Franklin Quisenberry. The Sudeth's brandywine, commonly known as brandywine, is a family heirloom, lovingly tended and handed down from mother to daughter in the Sudeth family of Tennessee. And I got the scoop on this tomato too by simply asking the right person the right question. Of more recent vintage, these tomatoes on the outside are psychedelic, like a vegetable Jimi Hendrix poster. Inside, they're both fun and nourishing. Tom Wagner's tomato creations are dazzling, and it amazes me to think that Tom was only a 10-year-old kid when he began breeding green zebra on the family farm in Kansas. A private breeder now in his 60s, Tom Wagner is affectionately known as the Tater Mater Pater. He's one of the most prolific tomato and potato breeders who has ever lived. His tomatoes are mind-expanding. I look forward to oohing and eyeing over whatever's next. With the exception of the small red fruit at the bottom, These are tomatoes under the influence of Tom Wagner. They've got Tom's green zebra genes in their ancestry. I don't know about you, but I get weak in the knees at the sight of those flamboyant stripes. Aren't we lucky to be living in such interesting tomato times? And this is one of the most interesting tomatoes of all. My heart belongs to Marshall Cletus Radiator Charlie Biles and his tomato, which he bred in the 1930s. Without any schooling, he reportedly piloted small planes, delivered airmail, and developed a garden tiller. His skillful handling of radiator repairs earned him the nickname Radiator Charlie. Biles' shop was located at the foot of a steep incline in Logan, West Virginia, where he waited for heavy coal and timber trucks with busted radiators to roll back down and land on his doorstep. To supplement his income in the 1940s and help pay off the $6,000 mortgage on his home, Charlie sold his tomatoes for $1 a plant. And he paid off most of the loan within 6 years, thus Radiator Charlie's mortgage lifter. If people know the term mortgage lifter at all, it's usually in connection with Radiator Charlie. But mortgage lifter is a generic term that refers to a set of big old pink tomatoes, mostly from central Appalachia. I've got 16 different ones in my book. Mortgage lifters tend to be subject to cracking and cat facing. They're corky and cursed with stems that are difficult to remove. But aficionados like me adore them anyway. Eating a thick, juicy mortgage lifter slab marbled with white like fat is like having a last steak supper before you die and go to tomato heaven. MC Biles didn't invent the term mortgage lifter. Commodities that generate extra income for farmers, such as hogs, corns, and beans, have traditionally been given that label. I think in hard economic times like these, we could all use a little mortgage lifter in our lives. Some people think that heirloom tomatoes are a rarefied commodity only for foodies, but that's just not so. The heirloom tomato is the people's tomato, bred by farmers and gardeners and designed to be homegrown. They are Dad's tomatoes, Ruby's, Sarah's, Ben's, and Gertie's. They're ours, Nostrale, Mayona, and to me, they're almost human. It's obviously clear to you by now that my heart belongs to tomatoes, and I wrote my book in the hopes that tomatoes will win your hearts as well. Heirlooms have their own beauty, flavor, and history. They reflect the people and culture of the times, but their future is threatened. We must put an end to the extinction of crop varieties and the associated loss of genetic diversity. Extinction is happening. The great dinner plate of life, the genetic reservoir of crop plants that is our common legacy, heritage, and birthright, is disappearing at the rate of 2% a year. It happens whenever seed is not passed down to the next generation, when new seed replaces the old, and the old is not conserved, when so much genetic diversity is lost that crops can't evolve, and we have acquired evolutionary responsibility. Seeds fall prey to disaster, green revolutions, and modernization. The introduction of F1 hybrids has killed off thousands of old standards. Thousands more perish as corporate control is concentrated and seed companies rid themselves of stock and discontinue traditional varieties. People fall prey to disaster when seeds fall prey. They starve. Seeds are the germ of life and the grains that come from them. Surely our fate is tied to our seeds. Please support organizations that preserve the earth's heritage. Grow, buy, and eat heirloom tomatoes and keep them alive. Again, it's been a great pleasure to be here today. I'm grateful to tomatoes for bringing us together, and I would be happy to take a few questions before signing books. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, do we have any questions from the audience? It's all part of the show.
I'm just curious the etymology of the name heirloom tomato.
You're curious about?
The etymology of the name heirloom, like why are they called heirloom tomatoes?
An heirloom tomato, heirloom connotes something of value. An heirloom tomato is a tomato of value that breeds true from seed and is capable of handing down to the next generation. F1 hybrids, on the other hand, don't breed true. They don't produce offspring like their parents.
Do we have?
Yes.
You cited an extinction rate, but a large number of the tomatoes that you presented were introduced in the 90s or very recent times. Do you have a acquisition rate? How often new tomatoes are added to, say, the Seed Savers catalog?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Are you a Seed Savers member? Great. Seed Savers does compile statistics. In fact, in comparison with a 1903 inventory that was taken by the USDA, we can assess that there's been a certain number of varieties lost since then. But of course, there's also a blossoming of heirloom tomatoes these days, which is wonderful because, when I talk about Tom Wagner in particular, he's breeding thousands of new varieties, and these are all open pollinated standard varieties capable of breeding true from seed and are the heirlooms of the future. So the losses for other crops are mind-boggling. For melons and watermelons, I wrote a book on I wrote a book on melons, I wrote a book on squashes. And so the losses in those categories are very significant and mind-boggling. And for many other categories.
Right. Well, I had one question that I'm sure is on everyone's mind here. So throughout your 30 years of growing tomatoes, as we grow our own in our own gardens, do you have any advice for their cultivation or any special tricks that you picked up in your expertise?
Well, it just so happens that I do have some advice about that. And it's all in my book, Everything You Need to Know to Grow Your Own. But if I could name my top 3 or 4 tips, I would say the greatest gift you can give your tomatoes is a garden situated in full sun. The second is a rich, fertile, loamy, warm soil. I'd also recommend that plants be caged rather than letting them sprawl, because that results in cleaner fruit, earlier and more productive harvests, and wide spacing between plants. I plant my tomatoes 5 feet apart in rows that are 7 feet apart. And the good air circulation reduces the incidence of disease and enhances ripening and productivity.
All right. Well, Dr. Goldman, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Thank you. My pleasure.